Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you got your drawers all dovetailed. Enough of you emailed me. I think you like the way we dovetailed them. Okay, my drawers dovetailed and glued. Now I'm going to show you this. The next thing we got to do is we got to cut a notch in it all the way around to receive the drawer bottom. Now, you can use a dado blade to do that, but you can also just use a saw blade. Now, typically what I do is I usually try to get the depth about quarter, 5/16. If I'm doing a big drawer, 5/16, small drawer, quarter. Now what you want to do is you want to come in just at the bottom of your pin, of your bottom half pin right here. And the reason you want to come in here, you want to be right there. And the reason for that is so that when it goes together, it will hide your groove. Now in this case, you can see the groove. This will be the back, and this will be the front. But we're going to do an applied front, so this will all be hidden. And then in a moment, we're going to notch this out in order to be able to do the bottom. And I'll explain more about that later. But all you want to do, this is pretty simple, is just get yourself set up just above your pin. And of course, run it. Now this is just a regular saw blade, and it does not do a flat top. It's going to leave them little ridges in there. Drawer bottom. So what? Now, your drawer bottom, depending upon what you're going to use. If you're going to use a piece of, which is what most people use anymore, is a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, then of course just make the width of your groove to fit your plywood. If you're going to use a solid bottom and you're going to process it, to be a flat bottom, then again, just fit the groove to whatever you're working with. We'll talk about more about the drawer bottoms here after a bit. Now, then we're ready to glue it up. And I'll show you a little bit about that. But while I'm here, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, then we're going to come back. So stay with me. Before I get too far along, one of the things I want to do, this is going to be the front of my drawer. It's going to set in the case just like this. And I haven't cleaned this up yet because I want to show you a neat way of doing it. But one of the things I want to do is I want to create a little space right here so that when my drawer goes closed, it can't catch on the front edge of the case. Pretty simple. Same thing in the back. Well, a little bit. If you're using a piece of plywood, okay, you can just, when you glue it up, you can cut the plywood to size and you can encapsulate the drawer bottom within the drawer. I rarely use plywood, so that's not what I do. So I'm going to show you what I do. On the back of this, I'm going to take the back out, and I'm going to show you that. I'm just going to raise my blade to about my thickness. I'm going to measure. What I want to create here is runners. And I'm going to measure this. And And all I'm going to do is make a cut right down through it. I have saw that. Glued it good. Now something you noticed, I snuck up on it to make sure I get it right. Yeah, we're going to have to saw this off. Now, what this does is this allows me the ability to slide my drawer bottom in from the back. Now some might question that I don't have a dovetail right here. You can put one there if you want. As long as my spacing isn't too great, and this is about 1.25 inches or so, I've never had an issue. But if you think you need one here, put one there. Because what we're making is a very traditional style drawer. Now our drawer bottom, again, if it's plywood, it's not an issue. And then this is made just to set right down in here. Slide right down in. Slide right down in. If it was littler, it'd do it. That's okay. Because this is not the one I'm going to use. We're going to do this traditional. And I want a panel that looks like a raised panel on the bottom. You've seen them. That's the way the old timers did it. I better make sure I got my... I'm a little wide, so I need to trim a minute. But the other thing you want to do is you want to run your grain crossways. That makes the expansion and contraction go from the front of the drawer to the back of the drawer. Because it's just going to set in its groove. We can either put some little screws in here or typically just some little nails and our drawer bottoms in. We don't need to get crazy with this. I never glue a drawer bottom in. Never. So let me trim this to fit. I got too much junk on my saw. Y'all don't do that, I know. All right. Write this down. 10 to 15 degrees and 1/8 of an inch. What am I talking about? Going to show you. Go bevel the bottom. Going to 10 degrees. Actually, I think I'm going to go to 15. Set my fence at a little strong 1/8 of an inch. Strong means other side of the line. And I'm going to bevel it. Now, if you've got a drawer bottom that has cupped on you, and if you resaw, this drawer bottom is about 3/8 of an inch. If you resaw this and you glue them up, when you resaw the boards, don't do them like a book match. Leave it would be your open side or the side that you opened up. One up, one down, one up, one down. And always saw them thick enough that you can come back and clean them up a little bit. Because rarely, no matter what you do, if you resaw a piece of wood, it's going to cut. It's because there's a moisture imbalance in there. I don't care how long it's been sitting around. I don't care if it's 500 years old. The inside of it has more moisture than the outside, and sometimes vice versa. But there's an imbalance. When you're going to resaw something like drawer bottoms or backs, resaw them, sticker them, clamp them good, or a little trick I use, if I've resawn this, when I get done, I'm going to open it up, turn it back to back, put some clamps on it to hold it. Because usually it's the side you open up that's has the most moisture, and as it dries, it pulls, and it'll cause it to cup. All right. The other thing is, if it cups, and you've got a drawer bottom that's got a little cup, and this one's got just a little, but it ain't much. You can take this, put it on here just like so, and this is also a good safety guard, is you put it on and you clamp it down. Clamp it to a straight call. That's going to give you something when you run through here to help you. If you've worked at a table saw and you feel comfortable doing it, you can just do it. All right. You see what 15 degrees gave me? It gives me a very shallow right here. And that's okay, but typically your old hand plane ones, they had a little steeper angle. So that's the reason 10 degrees. Now that 1/8 inch thing, you may have to adjust a little bit. It's going to depend upon your thickness right here. And you have a drawer bottom. Now I got to cut it to length. If you get a drawer bottom in tight, that's not difficult. Put it over the edge of something, holding it, the drawer bottom between your two hands, slap the drawer, come right out. One drawer bottom. Now I want to repeat again. This front edge, I took about a 1/16 off of it. Same way we did. I just scooted it through, and now I have two runners. Sitting on two runners. One drawer bottom. And Louis Scrivani, just for you, we got one drawer bottom. You'll laugh. You'll know what I mean. All right, let's go over back and see what else we got to do to this drawer. All right, when you glue your drawer bottom up, I forgot to mention something on this. One of the things I always do is I always dry fit my drawer, and I take a pencil and I go around and mark the inside so when I take it apart to cut my notches. So I make sure I cut them in the right place. Because if you don't, you can wind up with something that looks like that. You're not paying attention. So your orientation is important. And trust me, it's one of those things you can mess it up in a skinny minute. But when you're gluing your drawers up, smart idea is to put a piece of mat. I like the blue masking tape, the quick release stuff. I don't happen to have any here, and I tape off this joint, both insides. Don't worry about the outside because I'll be able to get to that and clean it up. Tape off your inside. Now, I wrote it in the newsletter, but I'm going to tell you again, if you use the cheap masking tape that you get at the box stores, be careful, because that glue can get under that edge and it'll glue it on there. And it can be a nightmare to get off. If it does, and this was a trick I found a couple weeks ago, somebody helped me glue up a bunch of drawers and they used the cheap masking tape. You know how it goes, it did everything exactly what they weren't supposed to do. And then let the drawers dry too long. It was their drawers, so anyway, you couldn't get the glue, you couldn't get that tape off to save your life. So I went and got a heat gun. In desperation, I got a heat gun. I'll tell you what, they were so bad, I was ready to cut the drawers apart and just say, forget it, we have to start over. And I took a heat gun and just lightly warmed it. What little bit I had to warm it, probably, I feel sure a hairdryer would do it. I just warmed it and then just took a sharp chisel and it just peeled right out of there. So it's a good idea. In a small drawer like this, using something like your yellow glue, Tight Bond 3, that's okay, but you got to work quick. You don't have a lot of time, particularly with the Tight Bond 3. It's going to set up quick. The glue we use, if you've got a lot of big dovetails and a lot of it, I'll use the liquid hide glue, or you can buy the Weld Bond powder and make you mix up a plastic resin glue. They're slower drying, or an extended dry glue. You want a little bit of time to be able to work with them. Again, this small drawer, I just use Tight Bond 3 because I was able to do it pretty quick. Now normally when you cut a set of dovetails, the dovetails are going to protrude just a little bit. That's what you want, because you want to be able to come back and clean everything up nice. So we make a call. And what it is, we just simply notch a piece of wood that will fit over top of our pins so that when we clamp this, it allows the pin that's protruding somewhere to go. And we clamp it up. Make sure you clamp your drawers up square. And you can exert a little pressure to pull everything tight, then back off just a little bit and keep a little snug pressure on, but you don't want it super, super tight. The reason for that is that if you, particularly in a big drawer, you can actually glue the front of this thing into a bow by exerting so much pressure. You don't want that. A good dovetail drawer wants to come in square. A good idea is either make you some little squares that you can clamp in here to hold it square while it's drying, or you can get the metal ones. They really do a nice job. You want to keep it square. That's important. Okay? Now, once your drawer is done and it's dry, now I went ahead on this one and I just simply knocked off my pins. And you can sand the pins flush, as well as the end off the tail ends. An easy way to do it, particularly if you've got a lot of them. I've shown you this before, but for those that missed it, I'll take a nice piece of wood, anything. A piece of 1/4 inch plywood is perfect. And I set it in here just back of my pins where they're protruding. I want something that's going to index off of the box and set flat. Now, my preference for this, again, is that spiral cut bit. I like that. I like the way it cuts. I like the shear on it. It doesn't chunk. But any good bottom bearing bit will work. And make sure you're down to where you're okay. Now this happens to be a little chest we're doing out of some pretty nasty stuff, but nevertheless. I just want to show you it. Be very particular when you're doing this, because you've got this piece of wood setting here. You've got an area, be careful that you don't let that router tip. Now you can clamp it on there if you've got one of the little dual handle routers, the ones you hold with both hands. That's a good idea too. Once I've got it, makes for a really quick dovetail cleanup. Nice and quick. And the cool thing about it is that, you can, like I said, you can sand them flush, but you got an end grain coming into a flat grain. And that can be a little tougher. A random orbit sander will try to wallow over it. It'll just keep climbing. So if you're going to sand them flush, start with a coarse grit paper. It don't care. It'll cut that end grain, which is harder than the flat grain, pretty much equal, because it's just shearing it off. Now the drawer that we're going in the corner cabinet with here, I made the front out of tiger maple, and I made the rest of it out of just hard maple. But I'll show you truing it up real quick. Beats a lot of sanding, huh? Now, listen carefully. This operation, I told you I was jumping ahead over there at the drawer bottom and cutting this notch. This procedure should be done before you cut the bottom or groove your front, because you want a nice flat level surface. Now we're going to go to the case and look at fitting this thing up. Okay. I've set us up a scenario here that's very common with drawers, and I'll show it to you. Now you notice what I did. All I did was made me a block of wood. I put a little side on it to act as a guide that simply sits in here for my drawer to run on. And remember I told you I drilled the holes large enough to allow some expansion and contraction. Now all I'm going to do is just barely touch the sides. I don't want this super tight, and I'm going to set my gaps. Make sure your gaps are good on both sides. But I want to show you something. Here's the common problem. See this? This drawer's rocking. Couple alternatives. What could I do? In this case, I could just put a little shim right underneath this runner. But if you're doing a dovetail case or something, you can't do that. What would be another alternative? Well, another alternative would be to go to this corner, just twist it up, and I could simply glue a little piece onto my runner. and get the rock out. The other thing you can do is, if it's rocking from this corner to this, I'm going from my left front to my right rear corner, that's my rock. Let me get my shim out of here. So what I need to do is I need to take a little bit of material off the opposing corners. So in this case, I'm on my left front and my right rear are up. So then my left rear and right front is what's touching. So what I want to do is I want to bring everything down equal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to take and hand plane a little bit off those opposing corners. Don't get too carried away until you check it. We still got a little bit. The best way to do it is take it off the front. Each stroke you kind of move back a little bit and blend it in. Otherwise you can create an arc in it. We don't got no more bounce. We're good. Now, this can create an issue, but this is an area where this is one of the reasons I really like this technique of building a drawer. What this can create me is an issue with the front of this drawer. Because it's got to, for this to work right, this has got to set dead flush all the way around here. And I'm not bad, but because I had to hand plane that, and the more you have to hand plane, the worse this can be. Now, one of the things that causes that twist is either all of your components were not square, or that's usually it, or something was off in one of the dovetails. A good idea is to glue it up on something nice and flat. And when you've got it in clamps, to be able to set it down and make sure it's not rocking. But so now we know how to get the rock out. Now what do we do about this? Well, a couple things. If you have, I'm going to show you just in a minute if you have a joiner. If not, what you can do is simply set it in place, take you some little wedges, and wedge it in tight where it doesn't move. Always make sure you're down, because see how the wedge will make the back kick up? So I would need to get a clamp on here. Wedge it in tight. Then simply taking your random orbit or something, whatever you're using, with a very coarse paper, I want to emphasize that. Then you sand this whole front flat and get it all nice and true. So that way when this drawer front goes on, this thing fits nice and tight to your case. Okay. Let's go back and talk a little bit more about drawers. I've got a video out there on YouTube, and I just kind of talk about this, but I never really got into it heavy enough, I don't guess. When you're, get this where you can see it, good. We've got these outside guides here that will be guiding our drawer. And we're going to be putting an overlay face on it. So that's going to act as a stop. Now, One of the problems with flush drawers that don't have that overlay, that come all the way in, and we want it setting flush with the front, is that if you got the drawer loose enough to run well, a lot of times when you close the drawer, it'll shift left to right and your gap is off. And, nobody goes around making sure the drawer is right. If you get it tight enough that don't happen, then sometimes in seasonal movements, the drawer can get tight. Here's something helps a lot. I'm going to show you this. Take yourself a plane. Don't bother this point. And on the inside, below the groove for the drawer, just take a hand plane and trim the back off a little bit. You'll see why in a minute. All right, now make sure when you sand your drawers that you ease all of these sharp edges. Here, right here on this end, take your random orbit, round that a little bit. Think of a drawer, think of this like the runners on a sleigh. Okay, install your drawer. You would already have your front on, everything's ready. Set it flush. Simply taking you a little piece of wood, notice the corners round it. Goes in right here. Now you understand what I did when I hand planed the back edge off. I made this so that when I pull this drawer in and out, it's not going to actually be hitting them, so that lets the drawer pull out really nice and smooth. But right at the point this drawer goes closed is where these are touching. And it positions the drawer exactly where you want it to be. The other thing it does is that it makes for a stop. Now, that traditional drawer bottom we did, where we angled it, and we did this on a 10 degree, you may actually have to take this and go to a 8 degree, a 7 degree, and cut a deep, steeper angle on this so that when your drawer sets in here, it clears these. Or just simply take a hand plane and shave it down a little bit so it clears them. Just make sure you don't get your stops above the groove for your drawer. There's a couple different ways of doing drawers. Now, let's assume for a moment that we've got our rock out and everything and you have a joiner. And we happen to have one right here. Set it up to where you've got the least amount of cut. In other words, you don't want to be taking much. Now, if you've got enough, depending on the size of the drawer, if you have enough bearing surface right here, if you have enough surface that you can get started, which we do, you're fine. If you don't, get you a piece of straight material that you can use to bridge it further back. What you want to do is you want to stay tight. You want your bottom runner, because they're now accurate. You want them tight to your fence, and of course make sure your fence is vertical. Now, before you do this, listen carefully. Because these knives are rotating this way, When you exit this drawer, all of this end grain right here, you can take some serious chunks out. You don't want that. So here's what we do. We turn it around. Then we make our final cut. I got a little bit still, but nothing serious. And now what I've got is I've got a nice front that's now adjusted 90 degrees to my drawer bottom, which is where everything is going to run. And it's now setting in here. I got cords in the way, guys. It's now going to set in here nice and flat, true to the face. We're good to go. Okay, come back. I'm going to look at making